Hi, team. Welcome to 10 Talks. Today's conversation is all about how women win our way. Kathy and I are on this journey to discover it. We don't have the answers. We want to know from you how you're winning, what's working, what's not working. Go to our website, howwomenwin.com, and there's a questionnaire you can fill out. Love to hear from you. So today's conversation is all about how women win from a coaching perspective. So Kathy, you want to intro our guest?
Yeah, for sure, Carlette. And I'm really excited to have Erin Lindsey with us today. As one of the oldsters in sport, we're always looking for the bright young talent that is coming behind us, that's going to grab the baton, emerge in a leadership role. And particularly, we're looking for women. And so it's just a real pleasure. Erin is on our board of directors. She is our awards chair, which just puts a big old target on her. And she stepped into that role and said, yeah, I'll do it. And so, Erin, thanks for your willingness to be part of this conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kathy. I'm excited to be here and talk about all things coaching and how we can do it well as women.
Wonderful. So just share with us really the power of your story. We want to know your journey you've been on, where you are, where you've been, and really what you're valuing most right now.
Absolutely. I could speak forever about my journey. It's been I appreciate Kathy saying that I'm young and up and coming, and I know that's all perspective, right? But I feel like it's been a long journey, especially in the volleyball world. I grew up in Honolulu, Hawaii. Volleyball is a really big deal in Hawaii. And my father was a coach of both basketball and volleyball. He actually found Dave Shoji, a very famous coach from Hawaii, in the UC Santa Barbara rec gym and got him out to play on the men's team at Santa Barbara when my dad was coaching there for the Gauchos before they were Division I or varsity. So just long family history in volleyball. I grew up playing the sport, baby court at the Outrigger Canoe Club, all those kind of things. And so I was around it a lot, and volleyball was a really big deal. It was a sport that had huge crowds and people talked about it. And so that's been a little different for me as I've gone through my career and going to places where volleyball maybe doesn't matter quite as much, in coming from a place where volleyball mattered a lot through my childhood. And so coming from and playing for my own father, who's a coach, I'm sure you've heard from a lot of people that can be an experience. But I do think that it really showed me what it meant to teach life and also work together as a team through sport. And my father did a lot of things to help our community in Hawaii and athletes that maybe wouldn't have otherwise had the ability to play, whether it was driving to the other side of the island to pick up my teammate because otherwise she would have to take the bus to practice and things like that. So I think that getting to see that at a young age and getting to play the sport I love really started the foundation for why I coach now and why I came back to coaching. I was in advertising and marketing for about 5 years after college. I thought I was done with volleyball. I was like, I want to try something else. Volleyball's been my whole life. And I think I want to pursue something and see if I can achieve outside of the sport. And so I did go into advertising and marketing right out of college. And I feel like it served me so well being in a professional environment and working in more of the corporate world before coming back to coaching. Because I do think that so much of what we do, as you all know, doesn't have to do with the X's and O's of coaching or the sport. And we're spending a lot of time managing both people, expectations, budgets, all kinds of things. And I think the opportunities I had to see businesses being run and seeing that type of work being done outside of sport really served me well and helped me develop some skills that have allowed me success in running programs. So I did go away to school. I went to the University of North Carolina. That's where I played. I played for Joe Segula there. I got my degree there, loved it, had a great experience. And like I said, from there, decided to pursue business. And so I went and worked for an ad agency in Chicago, and then ended up back down in Texas. My husband, well, he wasn't my husband at the time, but he was working for Dell. And so he made about 3 times what I was making in advertising. So I relocated to him. And as I was working in advertising, I just realized that I really wanted to pursue something in my life and in a career that filled me up a little bit more, and that I felt like was more important as far as giving to community, other people, things like that. I didn't really feel like I was getting to do that in advertising. I loved it. I loved working on a team. It was a creative process. It was really interesting work, but I just didn't feel like it was important enough. And so I started talking with other folks I knew in the volleyball community, talked to my old coach, Joe, back at Carolina, and just let him know, I think I want to get back into coaching. I think I can impact more people and influence more young women through coaching. And volleyball was what I knew. I didn't really want to spend more time getting more advanced degrees to teach or something like that. I felt like the quickest, most efficient way to get there was to go through volleyball. And so I went back to North Carolina and assisted Joe for a few years. That's where we had our children. And so that worked out really well for me. And I know that's a big challenge for a lot of women who are coaching, is figuring out, can I do this with a family, or can I start a family while I'm coaching? We were definitely able to figure it out. And then from there, I took my first head coaching job at Dartmouth College in the Ivy League when the kids were little. And that was an exceptional experience and a very interesting time to learn about who I was as a head coach and what that was going to look like. And I feel like a lot of what I lean on now and the way I do what I do now is based on, frankly, a lot of mistakes or failed attempts at doing some certain pieces of the job at Dartmouth. And it was a really good place, I would say, to learn and grow as a coach, especially as a head coach. Ultimately, I realized that we didn't want to live in New England. That was part of it for us. And that I did want to, I was at the very middle, I would say, maybe beginning, middle of my career. And I wanted a little higher level and a little more competition. And it's not that the Ivy teams aren't competitive. It just, we didn't spend quite as much time at the job as I felt like I had in me to be great at it. And so I decided that I wanted to pursue something different, see if we could work our way out west. And I've been close friends with Kevin Hambley ever since he was the assistant coach for my sister's first Olympic quad, which was Athens. And so I got to know Kevin because he was her assistant and was a huge advocate for her, both being on the team and her being a leader within the USA Volleyball program. And we kept in touch. And so he was coaching at Illinois at the time and asked if I would come and join him assistant coaching there. And then 8 months later, he took the Stanford job and asked if we would want to move out west. And that's exactly, what we were shooting for. And so I was very fortunate to get to be a part of 2 teams at Stanford of exceptional student athletes and staff members, and culminating with a national championship for us in 2018 before I accepted this job here at Santa Clara. So I've been here since early 2019, and we are working hard. We had a great first season. I culturally, there was a lot to turn around, and that was my first focus. And so we worked through that, and then COVID hit. So we've been working through that for the last year and a half. But yeah, hopefully I didn't go too long there, but that's kind of the crux of my experience in the sport.
Well, Erin, that was a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. And just the gift that you give us as we talk about how women win our way is really that difference between, can men and women coach females the same way? Because you've had, male coaches, you've had some interchange with that. What have you discovered about that?
Yeah, that was a tough discovery for me in my first head coaching job. I have to be honest. I hadn't thought about it very much. I do remember saying when I was looking at schools as an athlete that I wanted to play for a male coach. And I had no idea why.
Okay.
And I look back on it now and I just try to pick it apart and figure out, what led me to feeling like I had that preference. I think it was simply the experiences I had had with male and female coaches, and frankly, that there were so many more male coaches around and coaching me, and especially succeeding at a high level, that I think it was just a subconscious, or unconscious bias that, the best teams or the best programs are coached by men. And so now coaching and also in my first head coaching at Dartmouth, I had to look really hard at why I felt that way. And then for myself, if I wanted to be successful as a female in this sport, what did that mean if I myself had said I preferred to be coached by a man when I was choosing and when I was deciding where to go? And so I do think that there are ultimately, my husband and I always talk about when we go to movies, we always talk about how we know we're going to leave the movie feeling like we liked it or we didn't like it, probably based on the expectations coming in. Not really how good maybe the movie is, but more, did we expect it to be something? And did it surprise us in a good way and it was something else? Or did we expect it to be so good or so something and then it wasn't, and then it's disappointing? When I think about this now, it lives kind of in those expectations. And so what are the gendered expectations that athletes have going into a team or going into working with a coach based on whether they are male or female? And so that's what I started thinking about. And then from there, backing it out, okay, if an athlete is expecting this from me, is that me? And can I fulfill that? Or do we just need to get upfront in those expectations and make sure that they know exactly what they're going to get from me as a person and work through those gendered expectations? But I think that if you're, as a coach, if you're not necessarily doing that, I think a lot of women end up trapped a little bit in not even realizing their athletes may be expecting something of them because of a gender norm, right? But then what they're delivering is something that they expect as a coaching norm or some way they've communicated as a person. And so I really think it lives in those expectations, managing those expectations, communicating through them, because I just think generally, gender-wise, athletes, parents, fans, larger society expect men to push harder and be more direct. And they expect women to care and show that care, just right straight off the bat. And the men can care a lot and the women can care a lot. And we could all be doing it the same way. But the expectations then may drive how the athletes feel about their interactions and the behaviors and the communication that is coming in. And so in my programs, I really try to develop relationships with our athletes and with our staff so that we can basically just bust through those expectations and get to the place where we can all be ourselves and work to achieve together. But that takes a lot of time in the development of those relationships and trust in order to work through that.
So do you talk about this stuff with your athletes or
Yes.
just with your staff?
Yes, both.
With both? Okay,
Yes.
so how does the conversation go?
Well, so with the athletes, we meet individually once every 2 weeks. And in those meetings, I meet with them individually. We usually do it somewhere on campus, not in my office, because I find that creates a dynamic. The office dynamic can be a little intimidating and feel very work driven. And so I try to meet somewhere on campus with our athletes once every 2 weeks. We talk non-volleyball, but often it goes back to volleyball because that is what we are doing together. And I would say, Kathy, that's when most of these sort of conversations come up. And they come up in, okay, what are you struggling with, right? That's usually where it starts. And then how are you feeling about it? And then why do we feel that way? Or what is making us feel that way? I feel like those are the conversations where it pops its head out, right? Well, I felt this way about the tone you used when you said this to me. Or, I feel like when, you turn away from me in this way, that you're dismissing me or things like that. But I try to open up as much dialogue and conversation about how we're feeling, about our training, about our competition, in our match, in all the places, so that we can talk about it directly. Because I think the hard part, well, for me anyway, it's not hard to talk about it. It's hard to bring it up or to have it come up because so many of our athletes don't have the skills yet to communicate in a way where they can even identify what they're feeling and articulate it, let alone say, I think, as a woman, I mean, they're never going to say, as a woman, I wouldn't expect you to talk to me like that. But I feel
any more than you would have at that age. All you knew is you wanted to play for a guy. You didn't even know why.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they're where you were.
Exactly. And so I just try to expose it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that we do as volleyball, as coaches, in trying to make our teams better. Like, I want to expose where other teams are going to attack us, or where, we might be less than, physically. I want to expose that so we can be self-aware about what we're working on and what we're going into a competition with. And so that's what I talk to our athletes about, is we want to be self-aware of how we're feeling and where those feelings come from and why we might be feeling some kind of way, so that we can actually address it and not just ignore it and be told, no, you shouldn't feel some kind of way. And so that's no talk in our gym. We don't ever talk about should feel like this, should feel like that. We're going to feel what we're going to feel. And then from there, okay, like, what do we do with that? Like, how can we productively use that to become more self-aware, to be better people, to be better volleyball players, to be a better organization, to work together better?
And is that kind of work, Erin, that you have to do? Is Kevin having to do that at Stanford, or is Joe having to do that at North Carolina? And is that something that's different, or don't they have to do it?
I think it depends. I do think that they have to do it ultimately in the long run. And Kevin does do it at Stanford. I know that for a fact because I've worked with him. But I don't think the expectation to do it is as high. Or if they don't do it, they might not feel as much of it might not hurt them as much as it may hurt a female. I don't know that for sure, right? Because there are a lot of female coaches out there doing it all kinds of different ways. And there are a lot of male coaches doing this is the way I've found, because I am a very direct communicator. I tend to function with very high urgency and sometimes therefore impatience. And so I get very like snappy, and I'm like, I see things very quickly, right? And that can be very intimidating and also make people feel like I'm not there, like I need to catch up, give me some time, like, whoa, coach, like back off, right? And so I feel like for me personally, to be able to be myself, which I think is necessary in order to succeed, in order for me to be myself, I have to do these other things so that my athletes and my staff know me well enough that they know that I'm not coming at them, or that I don't feel like they're less than just because I'm communicating that way.
Well, Erin, the fact that you didn't know why you wanted a male or female, I mean, you knew you wanted a male coach, but you didn't really know why. What words of wisdom would you give athletes now, women? That's really what the journey we're on is. What can they do when they're starting to just show up and think, oh, I want a guy? I mean, you said it perfectly, guys. What you were thinking is that, you know, the guys have winning programs. They're stronger. We just have this certain understanding. So how can we change that and really empower not only our young women choosing coaches, but also our coaches, so we can make that transformational change to really set everybody up to win?
Yeah, I think the obvious answer is we need more women at the highest level winning a lot, so that it's not so clearly, or it doesn't look so much like men lead the best programs.
Okay.
So I do think that that's a part of it. That's a huge question, and I constantly think about that. Like how are we going to get more women opportunities at the most resourced and the best programs, as opposed to, as they reference the glass cliff, being given the programs or only getting the jobs that are already maybe set up to not succeed, right? And so I do think that there are some systematic and larger issues around, you know, we need to see her to be her
Yeah.
tagline, right? So I think it does live in developing more of the athletes who have played at the highest levels into coaching, and finding opportunities and showing that it is, and mentoring and showing that it is doable. Because I'm not sure until that becomes more even, the athletes themselves, especially the really competitive ones, are going to make different choices. I mean, I've definitely had some recruits and parents say, I would really like my daughter to play for a woman.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about empowering women when I recruit, because that's why I do this job. And so I like to communicate my why when I recruit, or when I'm talking about my program, and my why is empowering women to achieve. And I think that sport, especially competitive sport, and I mean, the research shows it, is one of the best ways to prepare women to achieve for the rest of their lives. And so for me, that's like very strongly my why. And so I have no problem articulating that. But we still need to be in programs that have the resources and have the brand and have the position in order to be the most competitive ones.
Well, Erin, I want to talk about your career journey, because you really laid out what I would consider a pretty female thought process with your career. So you played volleyball, you loved playing it, you grew up playing it, it was kind of your whole life. After college, you thought, okay, maybe I need to go do something else. You went on to corporate, and so we lost you for that little gap of time if we're looking at this system. So we lost you, and then you came back to us. And when you came back, you had coaches, you had people that you were engaged with, you had a pretty good network. So you started right in on that network and started to work your way through it. You had a partner, and he was making money in terms of you being able to come in from that perspective. Thought about having children, a whole nother element to it. And, I don't know where you and your partner and the kids are in this journey now, but you've been traveling, you're west, you've gone on that journey. So that's what I think women think about is like, can we really coach and have children and make money? So unpack that for us a bit so that you can give other women hope.
Yes, I would love to. And I will say that it's I feel at a very interesting, I don't know, age, generation, time of being very in between uh, the times when it's okay for men to stay at home, because that is what my husband ended up doing after we left North Carolina. We decided when I took the Dartmouth job, we started looking at jobs for him. And there were a ton. He was a software engineer. And so he was in tech, and there was a lot outside of Boston, but not right, in Hanover, which is super rural in New Hampshire. And then we started looking at childcare costs and realized that it didn't actually make sense for him to figure out how to work and then also pay for two children to be in full-time childcare, because they were 2 and 4 at the time, and manage what is a coaching job and coaching hours. And so we had a discussion as a couple, not really a family at that time. We've had future discussions as the kids have gotten older as a family, but then it was just Harold and I, and we talked about, what this looked like. And I was very lucky to have a partner who I think identified that I cared more about my job than he did. And we were able to make it work financially that allowed him to stay home, which I think is a huge, huge luxury and benefit for someone trying to pursue a career in coaching. The hours and what is asked of you, and even just the emotional toll, to be completely honest, is such that your partner has to really understand why you do what you do and understand that you care about it, and they have to care that you care about it. And there are a lot of things there to unpack, but I got lucky, and yeah, we've made it work. But that, I think him staying at home is one of the main reasons that I've been able to pursue my career the way I have, especially with all the quick moving, because he's stayed back twice now. Once when we were in Hanover to sell our house and the kids were in a daycare situation. So that was 6 months where we were apart, and the kids are 2 and 4. And he, we had a little bit of family help, but not like they weren't living where we were living. And then I should say 3 times, when I took the Illinois job, we didn't want to pull the kids out of school. And so we did another 6 months. And then when we moved to Stanford, we did the same thing. And that last one was a little bit different just because Kevin's family was doing the same thing, and we were very close with them. And so Kevin's wife, Mary, and their children, and Harold and our children were all kind of a family unit together as well. And so I would say that move was probably the easiest one. But it takes a lot of sacrifice. And for some people and some families, that's not going to be okay. That's not going to be the choice.
Yeah.
And when I talk to younger women about head coaching or about coaching and about really chasing a career and going after it, I try to be really honest, both about how I'm in the situation that, not everyone's going to be able to be in, but there is some need and some willingness. You need to have some willingness to be able to chase and to be able to move if an opportunity comes up and you think it's the best one for your career. And I think that's something that hasn't necessarily happened in our sport, and for a variety of reasons. I think sometimes the salaries aren't worth it, the job's not worth it, your spouse makes more than you do, and so therefore it doesn't make sense to move. But my hope is that the sport will keep growing in a way that there'll be more incentive to move.
Have you found in the places that you've been and gone to, so Illinois, you there with young children, then you go to Stanford, there with young children. I mean, I don't know how old your kids are now. I assume they're not in college yet, but yeah, but is there a difference in terms of the expectations of administrators of how they would support males with young children and females with young children? And should there be different expectations?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't have any specific examples, Kathy, of being able to point to something and say that there were different expectations or different treatment. But I think the cultures and the general feeling was that the male coaches had a wife at home taking care of the kids. And so no one asked about their kids, right or wrong. No one's asking about their kids, what they're doing. Where with, I've found that administrators often tell me or remind me, or they want to make sure that I know that they know I have kids, and, are you getting time with your kids?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and part of it maybe they're trying to establish a relationship with you through things that they know are important to you and everything else. And it's not like, oh, we didn't ask the guy about his kids, or whatever. I mean, it's kind of an interesting catch-22 for an administrator.
Yes,
because you don't want to just ignore that a woman has kids.
Absolutely.
Or that a guy has kids, but yeah.
I ran into this actually very early on when I first had Lexi, my daughter. She's actually a freshman in high school now. And I had her at UNC, and I was very close to Joe. I was assisting Joe, and I was very close to him because I had played for him. We had a really strong relationship, and he would tell me all the time, bring Lexi to the gym. It's great, bring her. And I know that from his perspective, he was being supportive, and he wanted to make sure that I could do this job and have children. But for me, I was like, I'm not bringing my daughter to the gym. I can't do my job with a 4-month-old in the gym. Like, I absolutely would not be able to do my job at the level that I expect myself to do my job if my kid was in a car seat, sitting on the side. And I know that not all women feel that way. And so I'm not trying to speak for other mothers, but it is interesting. And to your point, it is a catch-22. And I also think it's so many people want so many different things. And that's why we're in a little bit of a crosshairs, I think, in women work environment and in coaching and in athletic departments, because my AD tells me all the time, Erin, you need to go spend more time with your children. And I'm like, I spend a lot of time with my children every day. Like, it's fine. Like, we're good. And like, that's not I want to win, and I want to do this job really well. And I know how to do it and spend time with my children. So it's funny. I've kind of seen it the other way, or I've never taken like offense, I guess, to someone treating me as a mother different than someone was treating a male as a father. I just see it, the little things, like no one asked him about his kids, is interesting.
Well, and do you think that we need salaries so that women can have their husbands or their partners staying at home? And is that just an expectation for men that their salaries need to be large enough that their wife can stay home with the children? So is that a change that we can start to really implement that somewhat sets us up for success?
Yes, I think that's a part of it. It was interesting. Renee here at Santa Clara said, I know you're the breadwinner of your family, and so we're going to come with an offer that reflects that. And she said that to me before I even got the offer. So I think some administrators are aware of it and they understand that part of it. But I think I think some of it lives there, but I also think some of it still lives in just societal norms and some men feeling like they still have to provide. right?
And no, I think finding. I mean, yeah, and you've been authentic and honest about it and stuff. I mean, there are husbands. My husband and I had this conversation, and he was like, "No, I'm not." I said, "The only way this works is if you stay home," and it's like, "I'm not doing that." I mean, he didn't want to do it, and so therefore no kids. I mean, and again, I don't mean to be flip about it. It was a decision that was made with a lot more consideration than that, but it wasn't going to work for us.
Yeah.
And I have players that played for me who it didn't work for them. Their spouses were like, "Hey, I don't want this. You're gone all the time. I don't feel like I can pursue my career." I mean, these are, and again, good for you and Harold and stuff for the conversations that you've had and being able to find your way. But you're right. There's a lot of societal expectations and baggage. And maybe that's not even the way to say it and stuff, but just how we're raised, I guess, that says you do this and I do that.
Yeah. And I think that's what I meant, Kathy, when I said I'm in the middle. I feel a little in the middle of that generationally, because I see it so much less in the younger coaches who are in their 20s right now. And then also as I work with young women, I'm hopeful that those expectations are changing, and that more people can choose what they want to choose to do. And that we can all play different roles in the family and in the household and things like that. It's just going to take time. That's how I look at it. And we can only impact or affect what we have access to, in our positions right now.
So how has the way that, so you talked about, how do you turn your players into strong women and stuff? So do they, are they going through the transformation that you went through sooner than you did? In other words, the transformation of these are my expectations and I don't even know why I have them.
Yeah.
But
I hope so. I mean, I push them on that stuff all the time. Like, because we're not talking about volleyball, we try to talk about all different kinds of things, their parents, religion, politics, what's happening in the world, how they're feeling, why they're feeling some kind of way, what do they think? And I find that at least half of my students coming in don't know what they think, or they haven't thought about it. Maybe they haven't been given a voice or asked their opinion. Sometimes.
So do you ask them why they picked you? I mean, they obviously knew they were coming to play for a woman.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, I'll ask them why they pick me. I think that they will repeat what I say back to them a lot, though.
Sure.
Yeah. So I try to poke and ask more and more.
Not let them get the easy answers.
Really direct and efficient with my communication, and so it is pretty easy for them to pick up on the cues of what to say back if they just want to leave it at that. I look for more of those opportunities where something breaks down or they're really feeling like something's not working, and take that opportunity to ask a lot of questions. I mean, I had a conversation with one of my best players a couple of weeks ago about like self-absorption. And she goes, "Well, what do you think people like? What do you think? Why do you think people become self-absorbed?" And I'm like, "Wow, that's a really big question." And I'm like, "I don't know. What do you think?" And so we went back and forth. And I think just having conversations like that and pushing our athletes to have an opinion and to be okay engaging in conversation and dialogue, even if they're not sure they're right. So I think a lot of our young women right now, unfortunately, are feel like they need to give the right answer all the time. They need to be right. They need to be compliant. They need to be good, right? And so whatever that means for them, then can lead sometimes to, not digging into some tougher subjects or even looking hard at themselves, right? So I feel like one of my big roles in empowering and growing strong young women is to poke at that and make us look at that.
Yeah.
And then from there we can grow even bigger and brighter out of that awareness.
Well, Erin, this has been a great conversation. I really value you giving your players and yourself that space to be courageous and explore. And what I'm hearing so strongly is the power of just learning how to communicate. Who am I? What's important to me? And you do such a beautiful job of you did it on your own journey and kind of captured the playbook for it and are passing it on to the next gen of girls to really have those conversations. So thank you so much for sharing how you are winning your way, and really value just the fact that you're getting out there and going for what matters to you and helping any other women and people do the same thing. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And thanks, Carla and Kathy, for leading us in these conversations.
Kathy, thank you so much for just another conversation. You and I are on this journey, figuring it out. So team, it's up to you. Go out and figure out how you win, how women win our way, your way. Communicate, have some good conversations. If you've got daughters at work that are younger than you or older than you, wherever you are, just go into the courage of having some conversations so that they're conversations for change. Thank you.